The debate was a mess from top to bottom. They started off the first 10 minutes talking about guns, like before they even got to abortion. The abortion conversation was pretty standard talking points from Hillary. Was very passionate about the abortions conversation, and she was very unequivocal. She was like, this is it. She was extremely pro-life, pro-choice rather, and she didn't budge. Donald Trump could not answer whether or not he would appoint justices who would overturn Roe versus Wade. He couldn't answer it directly, so he ended up saying something that was worse. He said that if he gets elected, he thinks it's going to automatically happen. So before we even got to that, which is a substantive conversation because of the very different approaches from both candidates on that, from both parties, from ideologies, like that's one of the most divisive things. And, you know, that could actually affect the woman's right to choose. Before we even got to that, we wasted all the time talking about guns, like guns are under attack in America. I mean, as if the Second Amendment is really under attack, right? And that was one thing Chris Wallace did a lot of tonight. Chris Wallace entered in a lot of faulty premises that are not just loaded questions, but they are loaded questions, but they he sets the frame based on a false premise. The Second Amendment is under attack. No, the Second Amendment is not under attack. And Hillary Clinton, and regardless of why she does it, she never attacks the faulty premise. I think she doesn't attack the faulty premise because she either doesn't trust Americans to be able to handle that type of conversation, or she wants to pander and doesn't want to get into the nuance and the minutia of why the premise is faulty in the first place. She would rather pander, right? I think what I just said is the same exact thing as the first thing. That doesn't trust Americans with a substantive conversation about why the premise that Chris Wallace is presenting is faulty. The other premise was the faulty premise that he put out was about Social Security, right? She didn't challenge that. She left it. She left it at face value. And when you allow a premise to go unchallenged, people accept it as the baseline. And Hillary Clinton did not push back on that, just like she didn't push back on the fundamentals in the previous debate. She didn't push back on the fundamental flaw of Reaganomics. Tonight she did so. She did somewhat. So it was a little bit different tonight. All right. So you could join the conversation. I'm going to try to pull up some clips. I made a lot of notes. I'm doing this on the fly. So again, this may not go as smoothly as I would hope. But I'm going to pull up some clips that I thought were very interesting. WikiLeaks came up, and we're going to talk about quote unquote Project Veritas. We're going to talk about James O'Keefe quite a bit in this show. If not tonight, I'll do it in the bonus show. But here is the conversation on Russia and WikiLeaks, and it's kind of a long clip. I'm going to do my best to manage this thing properly because it's so let's see. WikiLeaks and Hillary Clinton's it's actually in the second half, but what the hell, let's give it a try.
And I want to clear up your position on this issue, because in a speech you gave to a Brazilian bank for which you were paid $225,000, we've learned from the WikiLeaks that you said this, and I want to quote, "My dream is a hemispheric common market with open trade and open borders." So that's the question. That's the question. Please quiet, everybody. Is that your dream, open borders?
Well, if you went on to read the rest of the sentence, I was talking about energy. You know, we trade more energy with our neighbors than we trade with the rest of the world combined. And I do want us to have an electric grid, an energy system that crosses borders. I think that will be a great benefit to us. But
so the audience started laughing there, right? The audience started laughing there because I didn't have time to record and fact check, but she started talking about energy when the quote that came from her speech had nothing, at least the way it was presented to the world, by WikiLeaks had nothing to do with energy. So I'm going to put that out there for the fact checkers, right? You can hear the audience laughing. It's hard to believe. But remember in the last debate, they asked her about her speech where she was discussing having a private and a personal, a public persona, and she blamed it on Abraham Lincoln. Well, if you go and actually read the entire speech, it had everything to do with Abraham Lincoln. The context put it, but it was so ridiculous, it was hard to believe. Then, just like this, it's hard to believe. So I really don't have much comment on that other than I want to know if someone has already fact checked that. So, right, if you've already fact checked that, send that to me on Twitter at the BPD Show. Did she talk about open borders open borders in the context of energy, which is totally different, right, than the way Chris Wallace presented it, as well as Donald Trump. There's a second section here, and hopefully I can pull it up, where she was discussing this in context, right? And she pivoted, she pivoted to Russia, right? She blamed the entire thing on Russia, which presented a very interesting conversation here. Let's see. Let me see if I can put this. Let's just give it a try. All right, here we go.
They have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet. This has come from the highest levels of the Russian government, clearly from Putin himself, in an effort, as 17 of our intelligence agencies have confirmed, to influence our election. So I actually think the most important question of this evening, Chris, is finally, will Donald Trump admit and condemn that the Russians are doing this, and make it clear that he will not have the help of Putin in this election, that he rejects Russian espionage.
All right, so enough of that. So it really came down to her pivoting this. Everything about WikiLeaks became about Russia, right? If we were doing a drinking game and we drank every time they asked about Russia, we'd all be dead. Or every time they mentioned Russia, we would all be dead. So, it got more interesting, though. It got a lot more interesting in that one exchange because, I want to say it was hilarious, but in a lot of ways it was sad. It was sad how quickly they would deflect and pivot and never answer the question. So I want to start. I have a marker here for the 4-minute mark inside of that one clip. I want you to hear this section of that same conversation. Listen.
Agencies, he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely.
She doesn't like Putin because Putin has outsmarted her at every step of the way. Excuse me. Putin has outsmarted her in Syria. He's outsmarted her every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes, that's
And I would
fine.
like to ask you this direct question. The top national security officials of this country do believe that Russia has been behind these hacks. Even if you don't know for sure whether they are, do you condemn?
Okay. All right. So this was an interesting exchange. There, and this is, again, I have to put this back out to the fact checkers in the audience. There have been some CIA officials, there have been some voices who have ostensibly confirmed that the leaks come via Russia, right? And we can get into the context of whether or not that matters, right? But there seems to be some consensus in the establishment that the leaks did come from Russia. So I'm going to put that out there for the fact checkers. You can do that. I see a lot of people rejecting it, but here's the bigger point. Whether or not the hacks came from Russia, you have to deal with it on both frequencies. You have to do a both and. You have to talk about the substance that was revealed, but you also can and should talk about the fact that Russia was involved, or even if Russia wasn't involved, even if it was just WikiLeaks or whoever else, you have the right to examine the motivations of the people who are doing the leaks, but that does not stop you from talking about the leaks itself. And for Hillary Clinton to do what everybody expected her to do, which was a hard pivot to just blame it on Russia, is highly disingenuous. But the question really, the question really begs itself. What else do we expect her to do? What else do we expect her to do when her back is up against the wall, when everyone is challenging her on the substance of her content, the content of her speeches, and the substance of the emails that were revealed? And so it's a twofold approach with this. She, number one, says that she was talking about energy, right? Which somebody will fact check before the end of the night. And then two, she pivots away from it very quickly to discuss Russia. I want to play the second half of this rebuttal.
Any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else?
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea. I
you
never met Putin. This is not my best friend. But if the United States got along with Russia, wouldn't be so bad. Let me tell you, Putin has outsmarted her and Obama at every single step of the way. Whether it's Syria, you name it, missiles. Take a look at the startup that they signed. The Russians have said, according to many, many reports, I can't believe they allowed us to do this. They create warheads and we can't. The Russians can't believe it. She has been outsmarted by Putin, and all you have to do is look at the Middle East. They've taken over. We've spent $6 trillion. They've taken over the Middle East. She has been outsmarted and outplayed worse than anybody I've ever seen in any government whatsoever.
We're a long way away from immigration, but I'm going to let you finish this.
All right. So actually, no, that's not what I was looking for. All right. So there's a clip in here, and I don't have it marked properly, so shame on me. There's a clip in here where Hillary Clinton got some get back. So she started saying that he started saying that she was been outsmarted by Putin. Later on, he says that Putin has no respect for her. I remember why I don't have it marked, because I was too busy tweeting. He said that Putin has no respect for Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton replied, that's because he would rather have a puppet like Donald Trump. I will tell you this, if nothing else, tonight was a pretty decent night for clapbacks. Where they were lacking in substance, they tried to make it up with clapbacks. It was kind of a funny night, and they even got to the point where they were just shouting at each other. I'll play that clip here because it was ridiculous.